A note to our listeners before we get started. This story contains references to sexual abuse and suicide. Please listen with care.
Honey, I don't know what to do with this. And I said, do with what? He said, I would like Rob to be here. Be where? Be here when I die. I really want him here. I really value our friendship. Do you think I should ask him? Yep, you should ask him. He said, what if he says no? What if he says yes? So I'm a little scared. Do you think he'll be angry if I ask him? Nope. Shocked, maybe. Touched, for sure. Confused, maybe. He might need a little time to think about the response, though. So don't be surprised if he can't respond right away. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm positive. And then he asked you. And you reacted exactly how I predicted you would. Which was, hold the phone. Did he really just ask me that? Wait, I need to think about this. I was watching your face. I'm like, yep, ding, 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 ding. There we go. And then when you left, Michael looked at me and said, do you think he'll come? Like, I think he might. I'm almost certain he will come. But I don't want you to be upset if he doesn't. But he came back to me, I think, a couple of days before, or when you turned around and told him you were going to come. And he said, I feel better about this. I'm ready for this now. I've said all my goodbyes.
I remember that day very clearly. It was absolutely stunningly gorgeous. It was July 2nd. It was the holiday weekend. And the city felt quiet. I'm Rob Cribb, and this is The Ultimate Choice. Michael had chosen this day to die, and I had accepted Michael's unique invitation to be there. When I woke up that morning, I had a heavy feeling from the moment I gained consciousness. I remembered what was going to happen, and I was in a kind of a trance, trying to envision what a medically assisted death actually looks like. How do you imagine something like that? How do you get ready? What do you wear? Do you bring a gift? What would you even give someone who will be dead before you leave?
My first thought as a doctor was to dress formally, but then I think I also didn't want it to seem like a funeral, because I don't think I would want that if roles were reversed. You know, I generally don't want it to seem like I'm in a rush to get this over with.
You know, it's one of those long weekends and people had all disappeared off to the cottages, and I remember driving through the city and there was no traffic, and it was just one of those spectacular summer days.
I guess long weekends sometimes bring that sense of opportunity and reprieve, and it also made it harder to know that the next day Michael would not wake up, that he wouldn't see what was there the next day.
I'm in the car driving to Michael's place. It's all familiar. I'd taken this route many times before. And it hits me again, this surreal feeling. I'm driving to this. To this. At the apartment building, I had a gut-check moment walking up the dark stairway. I first met Michael as a journalist, hoping to understand his situation for a story. But this day, I wasn't there as a journalist writing a story, not really. In the course of that work, Michael became a friend. I cared about him. I was there that day out of respect for him to mark his final day. Everything about it was complicated and strange and beautiful and overwhelming. The apartment door opens. Michael's there, smiling. He gives a wink, and he thanks me for being there. Anne is smiling too.
I spent almost 36 hours cleaning this apartment. I couldn't clean while Michael was present in the room because it drove him crazy. But I needed places for people to sit for this event, so I spent as much possible time as I could when he would be sleeping or in the other room cleaning this apartment up. And it was beautiful to watch him totally revive when you guys arrived. He was so ready for this, like he had rested for it. And I'm going to make it as joyful as possible because this is a final goodbye.
I'm looking around the small apartment. It's all the people close to Michael. Standing around him as he sits in his favorite recliner, there's family and friends. Nav, his doctor. And his pastor, Steve, from Forest Hill United, the church where Anne and Michael first met.
He walked into the church out of the blue, unannounced, and he said to me, "I want to clean your sanctuary." And he did. He came back the following week, and he came back every week, and he made sure that everything was in order. Like, he would have been horrified to see the communion table isn't dead center in the chancel. He would get a tape measure so that it was within a 16th of an inch correct. And every week he would come in and he would make the sanctuary pretty for Sunday morning service. There was a lot of laughter. He came alive in important ways.
It seemed pretty easy for him to laugh and tell jokes, and it was more like the Michael I had met 10 years earlier. He seemed lighter, and he seemed to have a lot of life in him. He didn't seem like a person who was going to be dead within an hour.
It was almost like an Irish wake or something, where everyone was talking about this lovely, charming, funny guy. And there he was, sort of holding court, and just like jovial and telling old stories. It was just like being at a bar and he was just telling stories. He's like Norm from Cheers.
Yeah.
It just all felt incongruent. This was Michael's day, and he called the shots. He had a final wish. One last smoke and a beer. It was a request that prompted an almost comical moment of relief because it wasn't part of the plan. And there was no beer in the fridge. Somebody had to go out and get some. And so I offered to go. The pub up the street would be the fastest choice, Anne told me. And so there I was, walking to a bar to buy a single beer for a man about to end his life. So I walked in and I say, it's an odd question, but can I buy one beer from your fridge there? A Pabst? It has to be a Pabst Blue Ribbon. And she says, yeah, sure. She hands it to me and I reach for my wallet and she says, "Is this for Michael?" I said, "Yeah." I said, Do you know what's happening today?" She says, "Yeah, I know what's happening today." And I said, "Well, what do I owe you?" And she says, No. It's on the house. And she says, "Send him my love." So then he has his beer.
And his last cigarette.
And then he says, "All right, let's call it a day." And he sort of stood up from that chair and took his last few steps into the bedroom. Even though everyone in the room understands what's about to happen here, it still feels shocking. The chatter stops, the room falls quiet. Anne is watching him take his final steps.
Soon he's not going to be hurting anymore. He's not going to be falling anymore. Damn, I'm going to miss him.
There's a lot going on. There's, on the one hand, it's a really beautiful moment between two people, a really special moment. So in one sense, it's a real honor to be able to witness that. I mean, as someone who never would have anticipated being a part of MAID, in some ways it feels like a real honor to be able to witness it. On the other hand, it's very difficult to wrap your mind around your role in the whole thing. Usually when I check someone's pulse, it's to make sure that their heart is beating properly. And then in this case, the reason is completely different. I had to prepare the medications, and then, I looked at Michael, and he indicated that I could proceed.
All of Nav's preparation leads to these few minutes. He injects Michael's first medication that lets him drift off to sleep quickly. And then the bedroom door opens. Dr. Prasad says to me, "Do you want to come in?" And, I didn't really want to. Because, I'd never witnessed anything like that. I've never watched anyone die in front of me. And then I watched him inject the second and the third injections. And you were lying next to him, and I could actually see his breath slow. And you could just see it happening.
In between the I love you, I love you, I love you. I was like, wow. I had never seen anyone die before me either. And it was a very surreal experience. And it was happening. And I kept thinking, how is Dr. Prasad going to cope with this when he leaves? How is Rob going to cope with this when he leaves? And I didn't know what to do with what I was doing or how I was feeling. I just knew I was happy he wasn't going to suffer anymore. And sad that I was going to miss him so very much. I had a few minutes alone with him after everything was done. And I put my hand on top of his and I said, "Honey, I miss you. But you're free. There's so much you can do now. But I won't be there to do it with you. But it is time, and it's okay. It's okay to be free."
Michael found an enormous amount of joy and meaning in being helpful, in taking care of people.
Steve Fetter knew Michael for about 15 years at Forest Hill. They were close friends, and together they built a community there.
And whether it was helping them move, or whether it was painting their office, or whether it was looking after their kids, or whether it was fixing a steam pipe and putting the pieces in place so the church could happen. What he wanted to do was do things that made life better for other people. And I think he would be really pleased to hear that we're continuing to talk about these things, and that his death and the way that he chose to do it provided an occasion for that.
But Steve was also Michael's pastor. They spent hours talking about this day. Assisted death remains controversial in some religious faiths. But Steve fully supported Michael's choice and all the complexity and questions that came with it.
I think right and wrong are the easy questions. And we very seldom have to think twice about what's right and what's wrong. We usually know. The things that we wrestle with, the things that keep us up at night, the things that make us second guess ourselves and wonder if we're doing it right or wrong or whether there was a better way is all the shades in between. I think everything we say about life after death is a metaphor. Everything. I don't think anybody knows for sure what that's like. So I don't know what I believe. I can tell you what I hope, and that's maybe a little different. I hope that some of the demons that pursued him are at rest.
Without Nav, none of this could have happened. From the first time Michael made his request to this moment, Nav was firm. He didn't question Michael's choice or the right to make it. But now, in the aftermath, perspective shifts.
The knowledge that you ended someone's life is difficult to grapple with. Even if the circumstances that that person had requested and it was legal and you're a licensed healthcare provider, you're still a human being who has played a role in ending another human being's life. I think whether you're a doctor or not, you probably hope never to do that in your entire life.
Images of Michael's life and his death filled the mind as the apartment door closed behind me. Back in the dark stairway, Nav and I descended the stairs together in silence. Michael was there when we arrived earlier. Now, a couple of hours later, he's gone. We left at the same time and opened the door to the outside, and suddenly there was this flood of light, and it was sunny, and it seemed so remarkably different from what we had just witnessed. I'm sort of dazed, and I remember saying, like, so what do you do now? Like, do you go home and watch the football game? Like, what happens after this? It's hard to explain. I'm fighting to find the words because after years of being a journalist and a writer, I still can't really find the right ones. Nav and I are now part of a group of Canadians coming to terms with death with a whole new set of rules. Just going home doesn't seem like the right thing to do at this point, and I get the sense he feels the same way. So together we decide to go for a walk. We end up at a nearby coffee shop, we sit down, and just talk.
You know, someone is alive, and then a few minutes later, they're dead, and there's that gravity and the tension that's in the air of that apartment. And then you walk outside, and people are driving down the street, getting their groceries, picking up takeout food, like nothing happened. And it was a really nice day, and I remember thinking that Michael would never see the sun in the sky like that. On a human level, I still feel bad about it.
Both Nav and I keep going over this one nagging question. Could we have done better for Michael? I mean, the collective we. Would things have been different if he'd had the support to lift him out of poverty or to live in a suitable place? Do you think he'd be alive today?
Yes, I do. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's something that's very hard to accept. But Michael had a very hard life from the time he was a child, and I do think that if he was offered more supports from the very beginning, that we might not be having this conversation today. Maybe I would be instead in clinic caring for patients like Michael, and for Michael himself. So yeah, I think one of the takeaways from the story is that we need to do better in general. And it is sad that Michael got to a point where he wanted MAID. And I think that's what we really need to try and prevent when it comes to social supports and other supports. We need to stop people from wanting MAID.
We sat for hours tossing around our reactions and our conflicted feelings, but the reality is that Canadians have made their expectations clear. The numbers are astonishing. MAID already accounts for more than 4% of all deaths in Canada. And those numbers will only keep growing. Canada is set to allow a whole new group of people to access MAID. Those whose sole underlying condition is mental illness. And many of them are waiting in the wings.
Because I've been suicidal for the last 20 years, it's kind of like my mind's little holy grail. That's just like, okay, but if this doesn't work, we can always fall back on this. This has kind of been the biggest problem of my life since I've been 7, is I've always been living my life with one foot out the door. And this is the cycle that I've been over for the last 20 years. It's been rinse and repeat of medication, so caught up in my own negative mindset for so long that it's kind of hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I've kind of just accepted that my life is what it is, and if I can get through it, great. If not, then I know that I might have an out.
And as they wait, questions around where Canada is headed as a country keep getting more complex.
These are legitimate requests by people who are saying, this is what I want. So why are there so many requests? I think it's because there is a culture of seeing it as a alternative medical treatment, not as a tragic last option. It is kind of unusual that in Canada you have this more permissive law because it's not last resort. And there's been a very organized, concerted effort to roll this out as this new kind of thing that we need to make available as another medical option. Not as a last resort option, but on par with everything else. So I think that really makes the entire health system an instrument in spreading the word.
All of these questions take me back home. Can you imagine when Dad was saying these things to you about wanting to end his life, can you imagine at the time thinking in the very near future, Canada would legalize it?
Never.
Was that even like a remote possibility?
Not at all.
That's next time on The Ultimate Choice. This season of The Ultimate Choice is reported by me, Rob Cribb. Written by Suzanne Reber and myself, and produced by Suzanne Reber and Bruce Edwards, who also mixed and sound designed our show. Allison Leighton Brown composed our theme and original music. Field recordings by Damian Kearns, Ian Thompson, and Bruce Edwards. Jess Alvarenga is our associate producer. Additional reporting by Masi Khalidbari, Declan Keogh, and Max Loslow at the Investigative Journalism Bureau. The Ultimate Choice was created by our executive producer, Suzanne Reber. Our show is a production of TVO Today in partnership with Piz Gloria Productions, the Investigative Journalism Bureau, and the Toronto Star.
Our team at TVO includes Shahriar Tajvidi, managing editor of podcasts and digital video, Lori Few, executive producer of digital, and John Ferry, vice president of programming and content. Special thanks to Anne-Marie Owens, editor of the Toronto Star, and thanks also to Blue Rodeo for the use of their iconic song. 5 Days in May is performed by Blue Rodeo, courtesy of Warner Music Canada, by arrangement with Warner Music Group Film and TV Licensing. If you enjoyed listening to The Ultimate Choice and believe in this kind of deeply reported and immersive storytelling, we'd be grateful if you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.